first event by YouEqualTech called Crafting Your Story, Beyond Your Personal Brand. There were 3 amazing speakers, but in this video, I'm going to show you Andy's talk, who's the director of Backstage Capital. Last year, Andy was named in the top 10 most influential BAME leaders in the UK. He's a proud father, product leader, and managing director of Backstage Capital, who run a 3-month Accelerator program investing £100,000 in BAME, LGBT, and women in tech. Enough from me, let's hear from Andy.
Andy Ayim, who is managing director at Backstage Capital London Accelerator.
First of all, thanks for having me. The Hive is beautiful. This is just your canteen. #living. Onfido.
#snack cupboard.
Today I want to touch on 3 things in particular. One of them being relationship building and the importance of relationship building outside of social media. I'm happy you touched on social media just now, actually. Secondly, on feeding your curiosity. And thirdly, on tracking and becoming a tracker. And I'll explain what that means a little bit more as I tell the story. So firstly, on relationship building, it's really easy to go through life and just have transactional moments with people, okay? A transactional moment could be, Andy, can you come and speak tonight and I will pay you a fee? And even though I don't want to speak and I don't like that topic, I'm going to do it because of that fee. A relationship building moment might be, actually, we can't afford to pay speakers, but we'd love to have you in here because you fit in with what we believe in our mission and we're very aligned and actually we can help you in this way. I'm going to do it then. When I left university, I did a crazy 3-month backpacking experience across Latin America, and I remember saying to my friends at the time that I was going to Latin America to go backpacking, and one of my friends actually said to me, that's not a black thing to do. Okay? It's interesting you laugh, right? Because to tell the truth, I saw about 4 black people in 3 months, and a kid came with his mother and held my hand and said, "Will I am." But that is the realities of the world we're living in, right? Okay, and I've been fortunate in my career where I've worked in South Africa, Italy, Kenya, Uganda, Botswana, San Francisco. I've traveled and worked quite a lot. And the number one thing that always just used to hit me again and again and again is that genius is evenly distributed, but opportunity really isn't. And when I'd go to a slum in Soweto in South Africa, or to Accra, where I'm from in Ghana, or to even when I was in Brazil, for example, going through the favelas, a lot of those kids that were my age have high potential, but they have low access to opportunity. And just because I was born in London, I've got high potential and this high access to opportunity. So how can I not take advantage of this opportunity that I have? When I left uni and I entered in my first role at Ernst & Young, it was like a baptism of hell because I was 40% of my real self. A lot of you can relate to that in the workplace. You're not 100% yourself. You're not even doing your best work because you can't bring your whole self to work. But I was doing it because I was investing in relationships. I was doing it because I knew that it was an academy company and I was going to learn from a world-class training scheme that's been running for years. I was doing it because I understood what it was as a brand and how I could monetize it on my journey and on my story. But off the back of that trip, I remember very vividly, there was a fire in Kinshasa airport in Kenya. We had camped across East Africa for 30-something days. I ended up staying a night in Kinshasa, somehow hustling a flight to Uganda, then hustling a flight to Turkey, then back to London. And as soon as I arrived, I received a text message from a friend of mine I grew up with. I shivered and I knew something was wrong and I found out my dad had passed away. But from that moment, I said to myself, life is so precious and so short, there is no way I'm going into any work environment and not being my most authentic self. That's when I put the line back into my head. That's when I started dressing how I wanted, but I started delivering value. And 3 years ago when I was in San Francisco, I was blogging and writing about the disparity that I see in tech. And I was calling it more of a meritocracy than a meritocracy because people are pattern matching against themselves and they just happen to be white middle-class men. And when I was growing up, Bill Gates was like the rock star and the hero. And then there was a guy called Steve Jobs. And then there was a guy called Mark Zuckerberg, and they were all white and middle class, and I couldn't relate to their journeys. And it was really interesting as I was documenting this and I was getting data behind this to prove that actually less than 1% of VC funding goes to people of color and less than 0.2% to black women. And then I had a hypothesis to test, similar to many entrepreneurs in the room when you're experimenting with your ideas. I said to myself, can I prove or disprove that there are some women in this world that may have ideas that are venture-backable businesses? I mean, you are 50% of the population. I was quite confident in this hypothesis. I said the same around people of color. I said the same about people from low-income backgrounds. if you really think about your brand differently, if you really think about yourself differently, if you're not defined by your role. I mentioned when my father passed away, one of the pivotal things that changed at that point. Another thing that changed at that point is that work was no longer the sun of my universe. It was a planet and I was the sun. I no longer revolved around work. Actually, work wasn't central to me. Now I was more holistically thinking about my family and my life and my quality of life and the lifestyle that I want and mindfulness and things that I actually care about and actually matter. Yeah, and that includes work, but work is not the be all and end all. And it's just a very different perspective. Like even if I go into an interview and I'd bring my whole authentic self and I didn't get a job, I was so comfortable with that. I was so cool with that. In fact, it kind of geared me up. You can kind of see it on stage now. Like I love that because you're not right for me and I'm not right for you. But can I add value in your environment? I'm confident I probably can. Do I think I could even add value in Onfido? I reckon I probably can.
Oh, yeah.
In a product role, I reckon I'll do a pretty good job. And that's not arrogance, but that's confidence in your ability that you get over time. Now let me talk about a little bit more about feeding your curiosity. Like, I told you I was in San Fran and I was blogging about something I cared about. Okay, just putting it out there in the world. The reason I even went on those backpacking trips was because as a kid I used to love watching National Geographic and just seeing those lions just sneaking up to that buffalo. And I used to love those. I used to just literally watch it like it was a movie. And watching it just inspired me and said, I just have to get out there and do a safari. I just have to get out there and experience the Amazon. I just have to get out and through my curiosity, despite not being the black thing to do, despite not knowing anyone that had done that, I went. You know, and we need to start thinking differently around how we position ourselves in the work that we do. You know, when people ask me kind of like what really motivates me, what difference do I really want to make in the world, I often quote to them that what I mentioned before, like genius is equally distributed, but opportunity isn't. You know, I'm here to help people build products customers love. The people that I'm most trying to help are the people that have been marginalized and deserve the opportunity. I think we're going to see a lot of winners from that batch. Like I mentioned before, like 500,000 so far deployed in London, 5 million deployed through Backstage so far. It's a smidget, it's tiny, but the thing is, what we're providing for these founders is opportunity, access to capital, and access to a knowledge base. The last thing I want to talk about is being a tracker. In my Google Docs for the last 4 years, what I've been doing is anytime I have any really key moments, I'll just write the date, write what it was about, and write one line about it. And what's interesting is when I look back at the themes and the things that I'm writing down, I can tell what I'm passionate about. I can tell what I'm interested in because I can tell by looking back after each year the kind of spaces that I'm spending the most time in and celebrating or learning lessons from. And some of them are wins, some of them are failures, but I still document them. But it gives me a really interesting opportunity to look back at where my curiosity leads me to every year or every quarter or every 6 months. And I've continued to do that exercise. So those are the 3 things I want to touch on. I don't want to go over time too much. I could speak a lot more, trust me, I could speak for England. But I just wanted to share those 3 things with you today. There's a ton of my story I didn't share, but I just wanted some actionable takeaways before I get in trouble. But I hope that was useful. Was that good?
Yeah.